Hey guys, tonight we're slipping back into the damp, smoky alleys of a samurai village in feudal Japan. The year? Somewhere between 1580 and 1650. But honestly, it doesn't matter much. The rice still grows slow, the samurai still scowl from behind lacquered masks. And you? You've just been woken up by the sound of a neighbor coughing his lungs out in the next hut over. The morning air is thick with wood smoke and the faint sting of old manure. There's a rooster nearby, screaming its lungs out like it's being paid to ruin your sleep. You stretch your arms under the thin reed mat and try to remember what hunger feels like when it's not just your baseline. You probably won't survive this, but at least you'll know what it's like to be peasant-level miserable in a time people romanticize way too much. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Drop your location and the current time in the comments. I love seeing where you're tuning in from. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You trudge out of your hut into the morning fog, bare feet sinking into the cold mud that lines every path in the village. It's not even real mud, just compacted dirt with goat droppings mashed in. The air smells faintly of miso, burning straw, and despair. Your stomach growls, but you already know what breakfast is. Rice, or more likely, not rice. On a good day you get okayome, the coarse, broken grains. On a bad day, millet porridge with a sprinkle of pickled radish if your neighbor owed your dad a favor. You kneel at the corner of your home and mutter a prayer to Inari, the fox deity of rice. You're not picky about gods as long as they can get you a second bowl. Life in a samurai village runs on rice, not just as food, but as power. The daimyo, your local lord, collects taxes in it. The samurai are paid with it. Marriages are arranged around it. Wars are funded by it. Your worth as a person is basically measured in how much of it you produce, carry, store, and surrender. You are a single link in a very long chain of rice management. And don't get any ideas about keeping an extra handful. You know what happened to that guy last autumn. You pass a rice paddy, already busy with half-sunken villagers in wide-brimmed hats, knee-deep in sloshing water, bent over like lowercase r's. Their backs are knotted with years of labor, and every now and then, one lets out a wheezy cough that echoes across the fields. The sun hasn't even risen all the way, and the humidity is already clinging to your skin like a wet kimono. A kid 2 years younger than you is struggling with a bamboo bucket twice his size. No one helps. That's not how this works. He has to earn his breakfast just like you. Now, rice farming is not glamorous. Despite what samurai films might show, elegant plowing, slow-motion beauty shots of water droplets on green stalks. The reality is backbreaking, leech-infested, and filled with ankle injuries. If you're lucky, you avoid tetanus from the iron, sickle rusting in the storage shed. If you're really lucky, you don't fall face first into a paddy during mosquito season and swallow a water beetle. Yes, that's happened. Twice. You know exactly how many grains of rice are in a scoop, how to plant with your eyes closed, and how to dodge the wrath of the steward who tracks yields like a hawk with an abacus. Speaking of which, here he comes. Tanaka-san. You instinctively lower your head. His wooden sandals clop along the path like a punctuation mark, and you hear the creak of his ledger bag. No smile. He doesn't smile. His job is to measure your labor and whisper it back to the samurai, who decide whether you eat or volunteer for military roadwork next week. You remember a fact one of the temple kids mentioned. Historians estimate that the average peasant consumed less than 1,800 calories per day during the Edo period, sometimes much less during lean seasons. You believe it. Your ribcage has started developing a personality of its own. It pokes through your faded tunic every time you twist to grab a load of firewood. It itches. Constantly. Mid-morning comes, and the sun breaks through the clouds just enough to remind everyone how miserable things are. You try not to think about the big storage house at the edge of the village, the one full of rice sacks guarded by samurai who eat white rice daily. Pure white rice, polished and steaming. You've never tasted it. You've only seen it in offerings. You once licked a grain off the shrine floor when no one was watching. You take a break and sit under a plum tree, though it barely offers shade. A passing dog limps by, ribs jutting out like bamboo slats. It's probably looking for the same thing you are, something vaguely edible. You share a dry rice cracker, hard as a rock, and likely older than you. It cracks loudly, drawing a glare from the matron weaving straw sandals nearby. She once threw a sandal at a merchant for shortchanging her on salt. She missed, but the message was clear. Life here isn't about peace. It's about friction managed with patience. A quirky truth you've overheard. Some households used to bury jars of fermented rice bran as makeshift refrigerators. You once opened one out of curiosity and immediately regretted it. It smelled like pickled regret and old sandals. But hey, it kept things cold, especially those precious radish slivers saved for midwinter meals. Lunch is just a more hopeful word for second disappointment. The millet gruel is thinner this season, and the priest says it's because the mountain spirits are angry. Historians still argue whether peasant spiritual life was more about genuine belief or pragmatic fear. Honestly, it's probably both. You pray because everyone else prays. You believe because not believing means confronting how little control you actually have. Your sister stubs her toe while gathering firewood and cries silently behind the hut. No one comforts her. Crying wastes water, and your family already used its morning ration from the communal well. You pass her a wrinkled persimmon from your sleeve, half-dried and slightly fermented. She eats it like a feast. As night falls, the village glows dimly with firelight. You retreat to your paper-thin-walled house, where the wind whistles in like a rude uncle. You curl up next to your straw mat, feet still dirty, and stomach lightly rumbling. Outside, a couple argues in hushed tones, something about a stolen chicken or maybe a borrowed hoe never returned. Doesn't matter. Tomorrow the rice waits again. And just before your eyes close, you whisper one last prayer to no one in particular. Please let it rain, but not too much. Please let the rice grow, but not rot. Please let Tanaka forget your name. Please let tomorrow be, if not better, at least survivable. You wake up to shouting, not the violent kind, not yet, but the loud, barked cadence of authority. The samurai patrol is making its rounds again, and someone forgot to bow fast enough. You don't need to see it to know the posture. Back straight, eyes lowered, neck craned just so, like you're trying to look obedient without accidentally making eye contact. Because in this village, looking directly at a samurai can get you beaten, or worse, re-educated. And re-education here doesn't involve scrolls or gentle tutors. Your body aches as you sit up on your mat. Not that you expected to feel rested. The straw is uneven. Your blanket is a worn robe shared with your brother. And something bit you at least twice last night. Probably a centipede. You rub your arm and hear the same shouting again. It's louder now. You peek through the shoji screen, paper thin, riddled with patched tears and smudges, and see the gleam of lacquered armor, black with gold trim. Your local daimyo's patrol. Probably bored, probably hungry for control. And in their boredom, they become judges of posture, tone, and whether you looked a bit too relaxed on your own porch. Your daimyo, Lord Ishikawa, isn't the most feared in the region, but that's not saying much. He has 30 samurai under his command and a talent for absurd taxes. He once levied a wind damage contribution after a seasonal typhoon wrecked half the village. You remember your father holding back tears as he surrendered half a sack of millet to help fix the castle roof, they said. You're not sure the castle even has a roof. These lords aren't quite kings, but they don't need to be. They have swords, they have land, they have retainers who memorize every village, family by name, crop yield, and number of able-bodied children. You're not just a peasant, you're a data point on a scroll that someone could roll up and toss into a fire if they didn't like your attitude. And attitude is a dangerous thing here. You learned that early when your uncle spoke too freely about the good years. He was taken for labor duty and came back 3 fingers short and permanently silent. He gardens now every day, even when there's snow. Your family says he's peaceful. You think he's just surviving in the only way the system still allows. As you head toward the communal well, you catch sight of the castle in the distance. Castle is generous. It's more like a large house with layers of outer walls and 2 towers that look noble until you see the patched woodwork up close. The daimyo lives there, elevated above your muddy village, peering out over rice paddies and treetops like a cat on a shelf. He doesn't visit often. When he does, it's a procession. Drums, banners, stiff courtiers, and a smell of incense so strong it makes you sneeze. Once, you actually sneezed during his passing. The samurai didn't even look at you. They just beat the ground with bamboo rods and warned all young men to control their bodily functions. You were 9. There's something bizarre about living under someone who you can't talk to, can't appeal to, and will likely never meet. He owns the land, but he doesn't farm it. He commands your labor, but his boots never touch mud. He holds your loyalty because he holds your life in his ledgers. You know his family crest better than his face. You draw the water and spot another villager, a widow named Fumi, dragging a load of firewood. She bows as the samurai pass, but her back isn't quick enough. One stops and mutters something about disrespectful posture. You clench your teeth. He taps her with the hilt of his sword, not hard enough to injure, but enough to humiliate. She apologizes and keeps walking. She's 70, and you just watch. Because what else can you, do? Later that day, your neighbor Ichiro grumbles about Lord Ishikawa's new inspection rule. Every home must provide 2 men for the upcoming irrigation project. You'd think the river systems maintain themselves, but apparently, they need to be monitored, channeled, and, most importantly, used as an excuse for conscripted labor. Ichiro's son is 14, yours is 11. Guess who's going to be holding the shovels next season? And if you think rebellion is a possibility, think again. There were uprisings, you've heard. Peasant revolts, sometimes, but they rarely succeeded. The samurai were trained from birth in strategy, swordsmanship, and the art of intimidation. You have calloused hands and 1 wooden hoe. Even when rebellion did erupt, it usually ended in heads on pikes and a burned village. Historians still argue whether these uprisings were truly about freedom or just desperation during famines. Either way, they didn't work. You remember hearing a tale about the White Lotus Society, a supposed underground group of rebel monks and peasants. Whispered legends say they operated in shadows, coordinated attacks against lords, and redistributed stolen rice. It sounds cool, sure, but even whispering that story earned your cousin a beating. So now it lives only in nighttime stories, exaggerated and toothless. The quirky reality, though, is that some daimyo were obsessed with theater and forced peasants to perform in elaborate seasonal plays for court amusement. Your village has one such tradition, the Spring Ghost Parade. You spend 3 days sewing paper masks and acting out a story where a rice spirit tricks a greedy noble. Everyone laughs, but never too loudly. Because guess who plays the greedy? Noble? A samurai's younger brother. Guess who wins the play? The noble. Every time. You spend the afternoon gathering thatch to repair your roof, interrupted by another village summons. Lord Ishikawa is sending a tax steward tomorrow, you know. The drill. Display your tools, your grain, your livestock, even your children if asked. Everything is inventory. Everything must be counted. nothing can be hidden. Except for the small clay pot buried behind your neighbor's house, where they store an extra half-pound of barley. You'll never tell, because if you did, they might. Report your mother's missing chickens. Dinner is less a meal and more a ritual. Boiled greens, a bit of fish bone broth, and the sound of your father trying not to groan from back pain. He's been farming since he was 5. You once asked him what he would have done if he weren't born into the peasant caste. He looked at you and said, "There's nothing else to be." And that's how it works here. The daimyo rules. The samurai enforce. You comply. Not because you agree, but because your ancestors did. And if you're lucky, maybe your child won't inherit quite as many blisters. You lie down again, the moon a dim slice behind the paper screen. A chill breeze rattles the roof tiles. Somewhere, a dog howls. Somewhere closer, a drunk samurai laughs at something he just kicked over. You pull the blanket tighter and close your eyes. Tomorrow you bow again. You wake up to rustling. Not the pleasant kind, like wind in bamboo, but the tense, calculated kind, like someone moving sacks of rice that don't belong to them. You lift your head slowly, eyes still gritty, and strain to listen. It's coming from behind the storage shed near the western rice field, the one with the half-collapsed roof and the noisy rats. It's too early for official tax collection, and too late for delivery. Which means, of course, it's someone stealing, and you suddenly feel afraid. Not for the thief, but for the village. Because when rice goes missing, the punishment rarely stops with the guilty. In feudal Japan, rice was more than just food. It was currency, class status, a unit of taxation, a political bargaining chip. A single sack could determine whether your village paid its share to the daimyo or came up short and invited inspection. An inspection didn't mean a polite inquiry. It meant armored samurai showing up with counting rods, ledgers, and long memories. By midday, the theft is discovered. Not officially, of course. The elders never admit things immediately. They shuffle around, grumbling, checking locks and pretending to recount. But you already see it in their eyes. Someone took rice, and someone else is going to pay. A murmur passes through the village like wind before a storm. You hear names whispered, fingers pointed, people suddenly remembering that Sozo-san's son came back with unusually white teeth, or that Fumi had more miso than usual. Paranoia spreads like mold. But no one wants to be the one to report it. Not unless they're confident it'll earn favor. Because while tattling might spare your family for now, it marks you forever. And vengeance in small villages doesn't need swords. It just needs rumors. Later you see the head steward Matsuda making his rounds. He's dressed in dull blue robes with a thick ledger strapped to his waist, and the kind of face that seems allergic to smiling. He asks questions without emotion. Who saw what? When the locks were last changed? Whether anyone has appeared unusually nourished? You bite your tongue. You think of your sister, who once shared a sweet potato from another village, and how 2 neighbors refused to talk to her for a week. Taxes in your village come in layers. First, the daimyo demands his share of rice, usually about 40% of your harvest. That's official. Then there are the seasonal levies, roadwork support, shrine maintenance, riverbank restoration. Then there's the informal obligation, like providing a gift during the steward's visit. Not required, but if you don't offer something, your yield might be mysteriously miscounted next year. Historians still argue whether these additional taxes were systematic or purely local corruption. You don't argue, you just watch. Your rice vanish, bowl by bowl, sack by sack. You remember an older kid once tried to hide some rice in a hollowed-out statue of Canaan, the goddess of mercy. He figured no one would dare desecrate a sacred image. He was wrong. The statue was smashed, and his family was reassigned to swamp clearance duty, a euphemism for hauling leeches out of marshes with their bare hands. Today, Your job is to help. The tax collection team inventory granary stores. You're not trusted with the math, of course, just the lifting. Sack after sack, you carry rice from storage to cart, each one marked with the name of a household. Some are light. You wonder if that's by design or reality. Some are too heavy, compensating for others perhaps. You feel the unfairness in your spine as it bends under another load. The quirky part? There were actual rice auditors, officials dispatched from the daimyo's castle to verify village collections. Their job was to make sure no steward skimmed off the top, no peasant cheated, and no samurai forgot to report side payments. They had secret inspection methods, like measuring sack weight versus volume, or checking moisture levels. You once overheard Matsuda whisper that one inspector tasted the rice to see if it had been stored with river pebbles to add false weight. Who knows if that's true, but it wouldn't surprise you. Back in your home, your mother sorts the family's remaining grains. Not much, a handful of broken rice, some barley, a pinch of millet, enough for 2 meals if you stretch it. She wraps it in cloth and places it near the cooking pit with the kind of reverence other people reserve for shrines. The rice thief, whoever it was, has still not been caught. But the atmosphere tightens. People begin locking their doors. An absurd gesture considering most of them are made of straw and wood. Conversations shorten. Children are warned to stay inside after dusk. And then it happens. The village head announces a voluntary donation day to replace the missing rice. Voluntary, of course, but if your family gives nothing, everyone will notice. If you give too much, they'll wonder where you got it. You end up surrendering a third of your barley. It stings, but less than suspicion would. That evening, there's a village meeting. No one says the word punishment, but it hangs in the air like smoke. The elders urge unity, trust, honor. The samurai standing behind them, arms folded, faces unreadable, make those words sound more like orders than ideals. It's then that a boy, no older than 10, starts crying, loudly. His mother clutches him, trying to quiet him, but he blurts out that he saw someone sneaking into the shed last night. Everyone freezes. He says it was Saito, the tall boy who works near the river, the one with strong arms, a tired smile, and a father who died last spring. You can feel the moment shift, like the room itself flinches. Saito is pulled forward. He doesn't deny it. He just looks down and says, "My sister was sick. She couldn't eat." His voice is calm, too calm, like he's already accepted the outcome. The samurai confer. No trial, no spectacle. Just an order. Saito will be sent to labor duty in the mountains. 6 months, they say. He bows, silent. His mother sobs. His sister stands frozen, lips pale. Later, as you lie in bed, you wonder if it was worth it. For Saito, for his sister. If feeding her for a few days was worth half a year of broken rocks and frozen nights. You think it might have been. You hope it was. You also wonder if he was the only one who took rice, or just the first one caught. And then you close your eyes and pray, not for justice, but for invisibility. You open your eyes to the familiar hiss of rain on the thatch above your head. At first it sounds peaceful, like maybe today you'll get a reprieve from fieldwork. But then you remember what rain means in a samurai village like yours. More leaks, more smoke trapped inside houses, and more rotten sandals. You shift on. Your mat and your back reminds you that the floor is packed dirt, barely covered by woven straw, and that your home wasn't exactly built to code. No one's was. Your roof sags. The beams creak. The paper screen separating the cooking area from the sleeping corner flutters slightly in the draft, and the corner of the room where the wall meets the floor is beginning to show signs of mold. Again, you step outside, and the ground gives way immediately. Mud. thick, sucking mud that grips your feet like an overzealous ant and refuses to let go. The village paths were once laid with stones, but over time they've either sunk or been repurposed as building material for someone's chicken coop. You slip and nearly twist your ankle, saving yourself with a graceless arm windmill and a quiet, furious curse that you instantly regret. You look around to make sure no elders heard you. Getting caught using impolite words can lead to temple lectures, or worse, someone's grandmother deciding you need to be retrained in manners via long, tedious chores. Most homes here are made from wattle and daub, branches woven together, smeared with a mix of clay, straw, and dung. The walls look solid until they don't. When it rains, they become sponges. When it's dry, they crack. During the rainy season, which this definitely is, everything smells like earth and mildew and foot. A few villagers are already scooping water from the floor of their homes with gourd ladles, like that's a normal part of morning chores. Inside your own hut, your mother is trying to keep the cooking fire lit, shielding it with her sleeve while blowing gently into the coals. Smoke curls up into the rafters and fills the room with a soft sting. The smoke is constant. It seeps into your clothes, your hair, your blankets. You haven't smelled clean air in weeks, and honestly, if you did, you probably wouldn't trust it. There's an open scholarly debate about how much privacy villagers had in their homes during this era. Some historians argue that the thin walls and communal layout of many homes meant little to no true privacy. You can confirm your parents' arguments, your brother's sleep-talking, your neighbor's digestive issues, all part of your nightly soundscape. You've learned to fall asleep to the rhythmic creak of someone's bed slats and the soft cough of a grandfather 2 doors down. Even worse than the walls are the roofs. Thatched with layers of straw and reeds, they're lightweight, affordable, and totally vulnerable to wind, birds, and fire. You've helped patch yours more times than you can count. But no matter how carefully you layer the bundles, leaks always find a way. Sometimes they trickle directly onto your face as you sleep. You've developed an uncanny sixth sense for avoiding wet spots on the floor in the dark. And then there's the insulation, or lack of it. In summer, the walls trap heat and turn your home into a steaming box of fermented human. In winter, the cold slices through the cracks, and you lie beneath your mat praying that frostbite doesn't start with your toes. Once, your sister tried, stuffing the gaps in the wall with crumpled straw and chicken feathers. It helped until the mice found it and turned it into a condo. Lighting is another joyless affair. Oil lamps are expensive and mostly reserved for temples or wealthier homes. You use pine torches when you absolutely have to, but mostly you just squint a lot and get used to darkness. You've stubbed your toe on the same corner stool for 6 years now. It's practically a tradition. You step out again after the rain lightens, and you pass the house of an elder, Okabe-san. His home is slightly better than yours, mostly because his son married into a wealthier family and occasionally sends back materials. He even has sliding doors made of lacquered wood. You once touched one and were promptly smacked with a fan. Not hard, but with a lot of judgment. Then you walk by the carpenter's house. The one real craftsperson in the village. His walls are stacked with offcuts, tools, and bits of bamboo scaffolding. He's built everything from funeral biers to festival floats. But even he lives in a home where the rain soaks through the corners. His front step is warped from decades of moisture, and the roofline is lined with buckets catching leaks like it's a sport. The quirky fact? Some villagers actually tried applying used oil from cooking to the roof thatch, hoping it would repel water. It mostly just attracted bugs and made the house smell like burnt fish for a week. Still, someone tries it every few years. Desperation breeds innovation, or really weird smells. You make your way toward the village center where a crowd is gathering. Not for a festival or a prayer, those are rare, but because the blacksmith's chimney collapsed during the night. That's bad. Not just for the blacksmith, but for everyone who needs tools repaired, horses shoed, or knives sharpened. He stands there shirtless, cursing softly, his fingers black with soot. He says the roof caved in because of the soaked beams. You nod in sympathy while secretly thanking the gods it wasn't your hut. And then you hear the bell, not the big temple bell, the smaller one by the fire watch tower. It rings twice, once for warning, twice for incident. Everyone freezes. You follow the gaze of the villagers toward the smoke curling up behind a row of houses. Fire. There's a kind of horror that creeps into your stomach when you realize a fire's broken out in a village where every wall is paper thin, every roof is straw, and every tool for fighting it is made of wood. People start running, not with panic, but with grim determination. This isn't rare. This is routine. You grab the nearest bucket and race toward the stream, joining a line of villagers already forming a bucket chain. Water sloshes. Feet slip. In mud. The smoke thickens. You see the flames licking the corner of a house, bright and angry. The family is already pulling out what little they own. Clothes, a child's toy, a sack of rice. No one yells for the samurai. They don't come. For this, you keep passing buckets. Your arms ache. The water barely dents the fire. But eventually, after what feels like an hour, the blaze dims. What's left is char, ash, smoke that stings the eyes and clings to your skin like grief. No one speaks for a while. Then, slowly, people start helping. The family gather what's left. One neighbor offers a mat to sleep on. Another donates a pot. This is how it works. Misery shared, not solved. That night, your house doesn't burn, but the smell of the fire wafts through every crack. You lie awake, heart still pounding, staring up at the thatch above your head. You count the leaks. You trace them with your finger. You wonder how much longer your roof will last. You hope it holds through the night. The morning is strangely quiet, which is never a good sign. Villages like yours thrive on sound. Roosters crowing, firewood being chopped, someone yelling at a pig. But today, even the animals seem reluctant to announce their presence. You step outside and immediately sense it. The tension, like taut thread stretched across the fields. Something is off. You don't have to wait long to find out what. A boy comes running down the muddy road, shouting something about the forest. Again, bandits, maybe, or bears. Or worse, both. You sigh. So it's going to be that kind of day. Living in a samurai-controlled village doesn't mean you're protected. Not really. It means the samurai protect themselves, their grain stores, their borders. You and your neighbors? You're mostly left to hope the wilderness leaves you alone. Bandits know exactly which paths are weekly patrolled. And bears? They don't care about status, only the smell of stored millet. You remember, not fondly, the last time a group of Ronin passed through. Masterless samurai looking for food, coin, or a reason to draw their swords. They weren't supposed to touch peasants. The code of Bushido forbade it, at least in theory. But theory doesn't stop a hungry man with a blade. They took 2 chickens, slapped the village head for speaking too slowly, and left a cracked rice pot in the road as a joke. No one laughed. You walk toward the edge of the village where the trees start. A small group is already forming. 5 or 6 men with wooden staves, and one old spear that's missing its tip. You're handed a torch, not because it's dark, but because fire scares more things than you ever will. There are 3 problems with the surrounding woods. 1, they're too close. 2, they're too deep. And 3, they're full of things that think you look edible. Take wild boars, for instance. Not your cartoonish clumsy pigs. These are tusked monsters with thick hides and short tempers. Your friend Haru still walks with a limp after one knocked him sideways during a chestnut harvest. And bears? You've only seen one, once, but the memory of its eyes, silent, unblinking, has nested somewhere in the back of your skull like a bad dream. They rarely come this close, but when they do, everyone climbs trees and prays to the mountain kami. Speaking of kami, the forest has its own reputation for spirits. Whispers tell of Kodama, tree spirits that cry out when their home is cut, or Yamauba, the mountain witch who eats lost children and can mimic their voices. Whether you believe in them or not, you don't stray off the main path, because someone always hears something they shouldn't. The boy who ran earlier leads you to the path where the noise came from. It's littered with broken branches, drag marks, and something that might be blood or might be plum sauce. No one wants to find out for sure. There's a burlap sack nearby, torn open, grains spilling into the dirt. Bandits or animals? Maybe both. Quirky fact, some villages used to hang strips of dried fish and garlic at the forest edge to ward off both spirits and wildlife. Yours just has a rope strung between two bamboo poles and a little prayer tag flapping sadly in the wind. You're pretty sure the last fox used it as a chew toy. The makeshift search party decides to return before dusk. Everyone knows better than to get caught in the woods after dark. The trees twist, the wind moans, and once someone swore they saw a pale woman floating between the trunks, calling in a voice that sounded just like their grandmother. When you return to the village, the samurai are there, but not to help. They're checking perimeter locks, inspecting rice sacks and making sure their supplies weren't touched. You watch one of them kick a dog aside to examine a cart. No apology, just a grunt. You hear another villager murmur that maybe we should have let the bandits take more if they'd taken the samurai too. You both chuckle, softly, carefully. By now, the village has accepted what happened. A thief or animal took something. You lost a little food. The patrol came too late. Again, nothing will be done. Again. That night, your family doesn't cook. The risk of drawing smells that might invite a hungry visitor is too high. You chew on dried yam chips and sip cold water. Your father sharpens a hoe into a makeshift spear, not that it'll help much. Your mother ties prayer tags on the lintel and mutters under her breath. You sleep poorly, not from noise, but from what isn't there. No frogs, no wind. Just silence so deep it presses into your chest like a stone. Around midnight, something brushes the side of your house. You sit upright. Your brother does too. Both of you hold your breath. Nothing happens. No growl, no knock, no whisper. You lie back down and try to convince yourself it was just the wind. You don't really believe it. You start your morning with a trip to the edge of the village, where a small wooden shack sits over a pit. That's right, it's time to visit the toilet. Or as it's more generously called, the benjo. You slide open the door, step inside, and immediately regret every life choice that led to this moment. The smell is ancient. It rises like a sentient fog. You try not to breathe too deeply. You try not to look down. But of course, you do. It's just a hole, a dark, bottomless pit carved into the ground, sometimes with a wooden seat if you're lucky, but more often just a plank. You balance yourself like a tightrope walker performing over a volcano of filth. Some toilets are shared, some are private, but none are pleasant. The best you can hope for is that no one used it recently, though the warmth of the wood usually tells you otherwise. And God's forbid you have to go at night. Bring a torch, watch your step, one slip, and you'll become the horror story every child in the village hears for the next decade. You finish as quickly as you can, exit the shack, and gulp fresh air like it's your first breath. Even your clothes feel like they need a bath. Now, too bad you won't get one. Bathing is reserved for special days, usually once a week if the weather allows, and you can heat enough water. Otherwise, it's a cold splash from the well and a prayer that your body odor doesn't offend anyone important. Sanitation in your village is, let's say, improvisational. Waste is sometimes used as fertilizer. a common practice in many parts of feudal Japan. It's efficient, yes, but not exactly hygienic. There's a euphemism for it. Night soil. Romantic, isn't it? Except when you're the one carrying the buckets to the fields at dawn. The smell clings to you in ways that soap can't undo. You once tripped and spilled a full pail onto your sandals. You burned them after that. Barefoot was better. There's a stream near the center of the village where people wash clothes, dishes, and sometimes themselves. But upstream and downstream matter. A lot. Upstream is for drinking and cooking. Downstream is for everything else. And you do not mess that up. The one time a new family did, the whole village got sick for a week. Fever, vomiting, the works. You learned a lot about which herbs are good for cramps that week, and which ones just make you vomit more. You head to the water to rinse your hands and see a group of women doing laundry. They slap the cloth against flat stones, water droplets flying in all directions. It's rhythmic, almost musical, but you know it's back-breaking work. The cold seeps into their hands. Their knuckles are red. One of them jokes about having fingers made of icicles. Another one laughs so hard she accidentally drops a sock into the current. It's gone forever. And then there's the insects. You'd think winter would be a relief, but no. There's always something crawling, buzzing, or biting. In the warmer months, mosquitoes are relentless. They sneak in through the cracks in your home and feast on your ankles while you sleep. During monsoon season, the standing water becomes a breeding ground for every flying pest imaginable. You slap your neck. So often it becomes a reflex. Once, you slapped your cousin by accident. He forgave you. Eventually. A quirky reality of feudal hygiene? Some wealthier homes used powdered charcoal as deodorant. Not perfume, not soap. Just crushed black powder dabbed onto the skin to absorb odor. You tried it once, using ash from the cooking fire. You looked like a ghost and smelled like burned radish. Never again. You help your mother gather kindling for the bathhouse, one of the few communal luxuries in the village. It's small, heated by firewood, and always damp. The water is shared, so you scrub before you enter. It's one of the rare places where people let their guard down. There's something about steam that softens the edges of daily misery. You listen to old men gripe about taxes, to women trading remedies for skin rashes, and to children splashing until their parents shush them. Historians still debate how widespread bathhouses were in rural villages, but your village has one, and it's more important than the shrine on some days. Clean skin is rare, warmth is rarer. Even if the wooden floor squeaks under your feet and the ceiling drips, it's a kind of peace. You leave the bathhouse feeling almost human again. You smell like cedar smoke and warm water. That lasts maybe 20 minutes. Then you pass a pigsty. Then you step in something unidentifiable. Then your cousin sneezes in your direction, and you feel the world shift slightly. By evening, your hands are raw from scrubbing root vegetables. Your feet are cracked from muddy roads, and your back aches from squatting over a fire. You know people in the future will romanticize this life. They'll say things like, a simpler time, or closer to nature. You want to invite them to clean a toilet pit in the rain. See how simple it feels then. That night, as you settle into your straw mat, you can still smell the faintest trace of the bathhouse, like a memory trying not to fade. You hold on to it. You breathe it in. You know it'll be gone by morning. The roosters announce the day before the sun does, like they're in some desperate competition for who can be the most annoying. You roll over, groan into your sleeve, and contemplate pretending to be sick, just for an extra hour of lying still. But you already know how that story ends. In your village, illness earns you 1 day of pity, followed by 3 days of suspicion and double chores. You sit up and start moving before someone calls your name. There's a kind of rhythm to your days that doesn't really change. The seasons change, the crops rotate, but the tasks? The weight of them is carved into your bones now. You know how to stack wood in perfect bundles. You can sort millet from rice husks with your eyes half closed. You even remember to walk quietly near the shrine so you don't get roped into sweeping it again. Today's schedule: fetch water, haul firewood, trim rice stalks, grind barley, maybe repair the thatch if there's time. Nothing exciting, nothing different, just the endless cycle of labor that keeps your home barely functional and your belly slightly less than empty. As you walk to the edge of the rice field, the sun finally climbs high enough to reveal the village fully. It's damp and smoky, as usual. A few of the older villagers are already out, bending over their plants with the kind of slow, practiced movement that comes from decades of repetition and just enough joint pain to make you wince watching them. Someone is sweeping. Someone else is shouting at a dog that stole a sandal. A baby cries in the background like punctuation. Your family doesn't keep a detailed calendar. You mark time by shrine festivals and tax deadlines. But today is a little different. It's a temple day, one of the few pauses built into the relentless tempo of village life. There's no feast, no parade, just a chance to bow before the gods, light incense, and hope for good harvest, mild weather, and fewer rats. Work, though, doesn't stop for prayer. You carry a bundle of kindling past the shrine as the priest rings the morning bell. You bow automatically, not because you're feeling especially devout, but because not bowing might get noticed. And being noticed is rarely good. The local temple is small, wood and stone mostly, with a thatched roof that's been repaired so often it looks like a patchwork quilt. There's a row of wooden statues near the altar. Inari with her foxes, Jizo the protector of travelers, and children, and Amaterasu, the sun goddess, beaming through centuries of soot. You light incense and whisper your hope. Please, just 1 week without illness or crop blight. Maybe 2. Religious life in the village is equal parts faith and habit. You pray because your parents did, because their parents did, and because nobody wants to be the one who skips an offering and causes the rain to stop. Historians still argue whether peasant spirituality in this era was more deeply felt or simply embedded into daily survival. You think it's both. You don't necessarily believe a fox spirit is adjusting your fate like a spinning top, but it doesn't hurt to offer rice anyway. The priest, an old man named Hoshino, lives in a small house behind the shrine. He's not especially holy, more like a gentle gossip with calloused hands and a deep knowledge of seasonal planting rituals. He's also one of the few people in the village who can read. You've seen him with scrolls, squinting in candlelight, muttering lines of poetry you don't understand. Sometimes he reads aloud, just to hear the words echo. There's a quirky side to these rituals too. Once a year, Hoshino leads a fertility blessing, where villagers scatter roasted beans around, the rice paddies to scare away demons. You don't ask too many questions about that one. The last time you joined, a squirrel stole half the beans, and someone claimed it was possessed. You still don't go near that tree. After the ritual, it's back to work. You chop firewood until your palms sting. You stack bundles until your shoulders ache. And still, the day isn't done. Your sister is boiling roots for a dye mixture. Your mother is weaving straw sandals. Your father is patching a hoe with a nail he found in the dirt last week. No one says, "Let's take a break." No one even thinks it. Rest isn't something you schedule. It's something you steal in 5-minute increments. You remember your cousin who once tried to fake an injury to get out of water hauling duty. He tied a bamboo splint to his leg and limped convincingly, until he forgot and ran from a bee. He still hasn't lived it down. Evenings are your only real pause. A fading sliver of light, a bowl of food, the chance to sit without someone handing you a new task. You eat in silence mostly. Chew slowly, listen to the fire crackle, and pretend you're full even when you're not. And maybe, just maybe, You get a minute to be alone. There's a spot behind your house, between two cedar trees, where the air smells just slightly less like smoke. You go there sometimes when everyone else is busy, and you sit, you breathe. You think about things that don't matter to survival. Cloud shapes, the sound of wind, what it would be like to fly like the herons overhead. But those moments are brief, because someone will call your name soon, and you'll go back to the rhythm. The same steps, the same sweat, the same prayer at the same shrine. Because in a samurai village, work is worship, and worship is never optional. The morning doesn't start with shouting today. It starts with silence, thick and strange. You sit up slowly, half expecting to see fog or maybe even snow. But the light through the paper walls is golden and clear. You dress quickly, shove your feet into cracked sandals and step outside. And there they are, two samurai in full armor, standing near the well. They aren't doing anything, just standing, one with a hand resting casually on the hilt of his katana, the other idly watching a chicken peck at his boot. The villagers give them a wide berth. You do too. You've been told since you could walk. Don't speak unless spoken to. Don't make eye contact. Don't smile too much. Don't run near them. Don't seem suspicious. But also, don't seem like you're trying not to seem suspicious. It's a delicate dance, and you never know what music they're dancing to. You learned young that the sword isn't just a weapon. It's a message, a boundary, a symbol. It's there to remind you that they can kill you, and you can't do anything about it. Owning a blade, even a small one, is illegal for you and everyone. Like you, if you're caught with so much as a sharpened nail strapped to your belt, you're in for a punishment, maybe a beating, maybe worse. Historians still argue whether the sword ban for peasants was strictly enforced or selectively applied. Either way, you don't test it. There's a story your uncle tells, always in a whisper, about a man from a nearby village who made his own knife to harvest bamboo. He got caught using it in public. The samurai who saw him didn't ask questions, just tested his blade on the man's leg, said it was dull, then left. No trial, no apology. Your uncle says that samurai were allowed to perform tsujigiri, crossroads, killing, a practice where they tested new swords on unsuspecting passers-by. Most scholars agree it wasn't common by your era, but you don't need it to be common. You just need it to be possible. That's enough. Today, the samurai have been sent to monitor village loyalty, which basically means stand around and intimidate people into looking busy. You find something to do immediately. You grab a broom and start sweeping the already swept pathway in front of your house. It doesn't matter if it's clean. It matters that you look obedient. Your younger brother isn't so lucky. He's caught picking his nose. One of the samurai calls him over. Your stomach tightens. You watch as your brother shuffles across the dirt, bowing repeatedly. The samurai chuckles, says something about how dirty hands lead to dirty thoughts, then flicks him on the forehead hard enough to knock him back. Everyone laughs nervously. Your brother laughs too, but you can see the sting in his eyes. After they leave, you help him wash the dirt off his face at the well. He doesn't say anything. You don't either. There's nothing to say. That's just how it is. Later in the day, one of the samurai returns with a list. It's a weapons check. He reads names slowly, carefully. Each family has to open their home and demonstrate they possess no contraband. No blades, no blacksmith tools, no hidden bows. Your family's turn comes. You line up outside your home, bowing deeply as he enters. He doesn't take off his sandals. He drags mud across your floor as he pokes through your storage baskets and taps the walls with the sheath of his katana. He finds nothing. Of course he doesn't. Your family is careful, always has been. But still, when he leaves, your mother breathes out like she's been holding it in for a decade. There's a quirky legend that some villages used to disguise kitchen knives as hairpins or sewing tools. Maybe it's true. Maybe it's just fantasy. Either way, you can't imagine the risk being worth it. You've seen too many punishments. Punishments in samurai culture are theatrical, not just practical, but performative. A warning to everyone else. You remember the time a boy stole dried fish from a traveling vendor. He was caught, tied to a post in the village square, and beaten in front of the entire community. Not because the fish was valuable, but because the vendor was under a samurai's protection. The boy's cries still echo in your mind sometimes, especially at night. But perhaps the worst is the feeling of absolute powerlessness. You see a man walking down the road with a sword and you flinch, not because he's doing anything wrong, but because he can at any moment. And you can't. Your life is not your own. It's his, if he decides it should be. There's no appeal, no judge, no scroll of rights tucked under a pillow, only the sword. Some of the older villagers remember times when things were even stricter, when curfews were enforced with force, when bows were outlawed even for hunting. You're lucky, they say. You don't know what it used to be like, but you do know what it's like to walk with your head slightly down, eyes soft, voice polite. Always polite, even when they laugh at you. Even when they cut the line at the well. Even when they take the last of the fish and leave your family with bones. That evening, the patrol finally leaves. The air shifts. People move more freely. Laughter returns cautiously. You sit under the tree behind your house and stretch your legs. You look at your hands, dirty, blistered, calloused. You wonder what they'd feel like holding a sword. What it would be like to carry one openly without fear. To walk with confidence, not caution. But that's not your story. That's someone else's dream. Yours is simple. Keep your family safe. Keep your head down. Make it through another day. You close your eyes and listen to the wind rustle through the grass. For now, that's enough. It's summer now, and your days are ruled by heat, bugs, and the kind of sweat that clings like guilt. You wake up with your back stuck to the mat, your face already damp before you've done anything, and your patience dangerously low. The straw roof above you buzzes faintly, hornets probably, or wasps, or something else that stings. You don't look up. You just swat half-heartedly at a mosquito on your neck and roll off your bedding like a damp futon burrito. Marriage season has started. Again. It's not official, but you can feel it. The elders begin to talk more loudly near the well. Old women whisper about who's visiting which family. And your parents have started using words like prospects. That's how you know. In the village, marriage isn't about love. It's about survival, alliances, and labor distribution. You're not marrying someone because your eyes met across a field of glistening rice. You're marrying because her family owns a decent plow, or because his father knows how to cure bamboo fungus. Affection is a luxury, and you learn early not to hope too hard for it. Your cousin now just got engaged to a boy from the next village over. She met him once, briefly, and now her days are filled with lessons on how to speak more softly, and how to pack dried persimmons without bruising them. You visit her that morning, bringing a bundle of straw she needs for her dowry basket, and you find her sitting under a tree, chewing a piece of sugar cane and looking exactly how you feel. Vaguely trapped. They say he's nice, she mutters, not looking at you. But they also said that about the last one, and he had 6 teeth and a goat named Wife. You don't know what to say, so you hand her the straw and sit beside her, letting the silence speak instead. The thing about marriage here is that once it happens, it happens. There's no room for annulments, breakups, or even long arguments. You live with the choice, or rather, the arrangement, and you make it work. Sometimes that means learning to love someone slowly. Sometimes it means coexisting like co-workers who share chores, rice, and sleep. And sometimes it means suffering quietly, because speaking out would dishonor your family. Romance does exist, though, in tiny blink-and-miss-it ways. A flower tucked behind an ear, a rice dumpling wrapped in extra cloth, a soft word in the dark when no one's listening. You've seen it. You've felt it. You just don't talk about it. Childbirth is the other side of that coin, and it's brutal. You've watched women go through it with nothing but grit, a rice wine-soaked rag, and the steady grip of another woman's hand. There's no medicine, no sterile tools, just prayers, towels, and hope. The midwife is also the village bone setter and part-time exorcist. You trust her more than the samurai, and that's saying something. There was a time not long ago when your aunt gave birth during a summer storm. The roof leaked onto the mat. Lightning struck a tree outside. The baby came out silent and blue. The midwife breathed into her tiny mouth for what felt like hours. And then, miracle or coincidence, the child cried. Everyone in the house cried too, except your aunt. She just lay there, eyes open, unmoving. She survived, barely, but she never walked the same again. Historians still argue whether rural Japanese birth practices in this era were truly spiritual experiences or simply endured biological events. In your village, they're both. Birth is where pain, faith, and desperation meet. Younger kids run around barefoot today, squealing and sticky with plum juice. The sun beats down like it's angry. You smell sweat, compost, and something vaguely rotten. It might be the compost, it might be your shirt. Either way, you splash water on your face and keep moving. Mosquitoes are at war with your skin. You've smeared crushed mint and ashes on your arms like the older villagers told you to. Doesn't work. They bite anyway. There's a rumor that garlic helps, but you ate some last week and now everyone just avoids you. You swat and scratch and swear under your breath, then swat again. At night, the heat doesn't leave. Your home turns into a sticky furnace. You lie on your mat in a haze of sweat and insect hums, listening to the sound of someone down the lane, fanning themselves with a rice winnow. You once made a fan out of chicken feathers. It worked until it disintegrated mid-wave and flung fluff into your eyes. Your father tells you to consider marriage, says you need someone to help carry firewood, cook millet, calm crying babies. You nod like you're thinking about it. You're not. Not yet. The quirky thing? Some villagers believe that tying red string around your wrist during the full moon will bind your heart to your destined spouse. You tried it once. Nothing happened, unless you count the rope burn. You sleep lightly, rolling away from sweat puddles, slapping the occasional beetle that crawls across your neck. A cicada screams outside the window. Just one, like a drunk trying to remember. A song. Tomorrow someone else might be engaged. Another name scribbled onto a shrine ledger. Another girl expected to start weaving faster. Another boy told to save more rice. And you? You'll keep working, keep sweating, keep hoping that, if nothing else, your future spouse doesn't name a goat after you. The days are shorter now, and the shadows stretch longer across the fields. The air smells faintly of dry leaves and pine smoke. And for once, there's a slight breeze that doesn't feel like a personal insult. You should be comforted by the shift in seasons, but there's something else in the air too. Something older than the harvest, something colder than the wind. It's Oban season, the time when spirits return. Everyone's acting just a little differently. People speak more softly. The children are oddly well behaved. No one lingers in the fields after dark. Your mother's already placed cucumbers and eggplants near the doorway. Tiny spirit mounts, one fast, one slow. The cucumbers are for the spirits to ride in swiftly. The eggplants? For a more patient return. You think it's silly until you see the way her hands tremble as she arranges them. Tonight, there'll be lanterns. They'll float down the river in long lines, flickering in the dusk. a soft light to guide the dead back to wherever they came from, or wherever they still are. Spiritual life in your village isn't about belief. It's about fear, about memory, about not tempting fate. You don't know if you believe in ghosts, but you do know not to whistle at night. You don't step over graves. You bow near the river, and you never, ever look into a mirror after dark. The shrine is decorated with white streamers and lotus flowers. The priest chants rhythmically, his voice echoing against the wooden beams, rising and falling like wind over grass. Everyone kneels. Some pray, some glance around nervously. You do both. There's a small altar near the back for lost children. You see your friend Heine kneeling there. Her brother drowned last spring when the river rose too fast. She hasn't spoken much since. Tonight she's lighting incense with hands so still they look carved from stone. Historians still argue whether the Japanese folk belief in yurei, restless spirits, stemmed more from Buddhist ideas of attachment or older Shinto fears of impurity and death. You don't care. All you know is that something feels present tonight. Like the air is thicker, heavier, like someone else is watching. Back at home, your grandmother hangs sprigs of mugwort and garlic above the doorway. To keep the bad ones out, she says. You ask what she means by bad ones. She doesn't answer. You sleep fitfully that night. The wind groans through the roof, and somewhere outside a dog barks once, then nothing. You dream of water, of footsteps in shallow pools, of long hair trailing through the mud. In the morning, the lanterns are gone. Some floated to the bend in the river. Some sank. A few are stuck in the reeds, their tiny flames still smoldering. The priest says that if a lantern returns to shore, it means the spirit hasn't found peace. 3 came back last year. You take the long path to the outer fields, the one that passes the old graves. You don't look directly at the stones. You pretend not to notice the offerings. Dried flowers, bits of rice, a single broken sandal. You've heard stories of children lured into the woods by voices that sound familiar, of women who see their dead husbands beckoning from the river, of old men who speak to shadows and never wake up again. And then there's the outhouse. Yes, that outhouse, the one near the woods. Everyone avoids it, not because it smells worse than the others, though it does, but because something happened there. Years ago, a boy went in and never came out. They found his sandal in the pit, but not him. Some say he ran away. Some say the spirits took him. You've never used that one. Not once. Not ever. The village has a way of absorbing its hauntings. They become part of the landscape. The woman who mutters to herself near the bamboo grove, just don't speak to her. The corner of the field where crops never grow, walk around it. The well that echoes too long when you drop a stone, use the next one. And yet, life goes on, because it has to. You can't stop harvesting just because the trees whisper your name. You can't skip the firewood just because the wind carries an extra voice. You mutter a prayer. You bow. You keep walking. There's a quirky superstition that if you write the name of a ghost on a piece of bark and float it downstream, the spirit will leave you alone. You tried it once. You didn't know the ghost's name, so you wrote your own, just in case. That night, you light a candle before bed. Not for light, but for protection. You whisper thanks to whatever spirits passed through. You ask them to keep walking, and as you lie down, you feel something shift. A quiet exhale from the forest, a breeze that wasn't there before. But you don't open your eyes. You never open your eyes. You sit outside the temple, fingers stained with charcoal, your knees stiff from kneeling too long. The sun is already high, burning away the last of the morning mist, but you're still trying to copy the same 3 characters from the old priest's scroll. They never look quite right. The lines slant too much, the strokes lack confidence, and somehow your kanji for rice still ends up looking like death. The irony isn't lost on you. Education, in your world, is a privilege by accident. You're only here because the priest, old Hoshino, saw you sweeping the shrine steps one morning and asked if you could count. You said yes. You lied. He taught you anyway. It's not an official school, just a quiet corner of the temple, a chipped inkstone, and a few brittle scrolls that smell like ash and mildew. Most of the kids in your village won't learn to read. There's simply no time, no paper, no reason. Unless you're the child of a samurai or a merchant, or unless, like you happen to be in the right place when a tired old man decides you're worth teaching. Your parents think it's a waste of time. Words don't fill bowls, your mother says. She's not wrong. You don't tell her you secretly love the sound of brush on paper, the way language feels like magic you can touch. Historians still argue about the true literacy rates in Edo period. Villages. Some say more people could read than previously assumed, especially in the later years, when temple schools and traveling scribes became more common. Others insist it was limited to temple servants and the children of artisans. You don't know what's true. You only know how rare this feels. The priest gives you a page with a poem on it. Something about moonlight on water. You can't read half of it, but the characters are beautiful. You trace them slowly, carefully. Your brush wobbles. The ink bleeds. Still, for a few moments, it feels like you're touching something from a world far beyond this one. Your friend Takao isn't so lucky. His father's a thatcher, his hands permanently dusted with straw. Takao once asked if he could join your little lessons. The priest said yes, but Takao's father didn't. "Let the monks have their dreams," he grunted. "We've got roofs to build." Some families send their children to temple purely for discipline. It's easier to let the priest scold them into obedience than do it themselves. You've seen boys scrubbing stone paths in silence, repeating mantras with glazed eyes. Education, for most, means memorization, not understanding. Recite, bow, repeat. There's a traveling merchant who comes through the village once a month. He wears fine robes and speaks quickly, like the world might leave him behind if he pauses. You watch him count coins, scribble tallies, read from a ledger with symbols that look more complex than anything you've seen. He says he studied in Edo, where they have entire buildings just for scrolls. Libraries, they're called. You can't imagine such a place. He might as well have said sky castles. The quirky truth? Some villages had picture books, kibyoshi, crudely drawn stories that mixed gossip, cautionary tales, and scandalous humor. One of the scrolls Hoshino keeps locked away might be one. He won't show it, says it's not for children. You try not to be too curious. You fail. Today, Hoshino teaches you how to write the characters for fire and wind. You smirk thinking how much your daily life revolves around avoiding both. Fire burns your house. Wind blows it apart. It's only fair you should learn their names. Your little brother asks you to teach him too. He holds the brush like it's a spoon and spills half the ink. But when he manages to scrawl a halfway recognizable mountain, his face lights up like a festival lantern. You ruffle his hair, then make him clean the inkstone. The samurai children in the next province over have tutors, scholars, even practice scrolls with red ink corrections. You have one brush, one page, and a recycled scrap of cloth for blotting. But you learn anyway, slowly, quietly, often in secret. You dream sometimes of becoming a scribe, of writing stories instead of planting rice, of recording history instead, of surviving it. But that's not your future. You'll probably marry, you'll work, you'll grow old. Your ink-stained fingers will forget what calligraphy feels like. The scrolls will stay behind in Hoshino's temple, and someone else will sweep the floors. Still, for now, you write. At dusk, you carry water to the temple's side basin and see Hoshino dozing on the porch, a scroll resting on his lap. You don't wake him. You just sit nearby, open your own worn scrap of paper and begin again. Stroke by stroke. Word by word. Trying to leave a mark no one else can see. Dinner tonight is millet gruel. Again, you stare into the bowl, hoping it'll somehow evolve into something else. Maybe a dried sardine, or even just a chunk of yam. But no, it's the same beige swamp it always is. Your stomach growls, not out of excitement, but as a kind of protest. You scoop it slowly, blowing on it, even though it's barely warm. The grain-to-water ratio is pathetic, but that's the point. Make it stretch. You chew like it matters. You swallow like it doesn't. Food in your village is not something you look forward to. It's something you manage. Most days, you eat. Twice, maybe 3 times during harvest. Always small portions. Always some version of grain and vegetable. Protein is rare, precious, and almost mythical. Once your family caught a small eel in the irrigation canal. You grilled it over hot coals and tore it into 5 perfect pieces. You still think about that eel. It tasted like salt and smoke and a little bit of magic. The basic diet here is millet or barley, with occasional rice if you've managed to avoid being taxed into starvation. Pickled vegetables are a luxury, though your grandmother always seems to have some wrinkled daikon buried in a jar somewhere. Soybeans are common, but rarely generous. A few scattered on top of your gruel is considered a good day. Today, your mother sprinkles sesame seeds on your bowl. You blink. That's new. She shrugs and mutters something about a trader passing through. But you can tell she traded something valuable. You eat them slowly, like each one is its own meal. You help your sister clean the kitchen corner after dinner. Not a real kitchen, of course, just a stone pit for the fire, a soot-blackened pot, and a wooden ladle with a split handle. The walls are stained with years of smoke. The floor is soft with spilled grain. The water you use to cook is reused to wash dishes, and then reused again to rinse laundry, then used again to dump on the compost heap. You reuse everything. Waste is dangerous. Waste means hunger tomorrow. You remember the time a family let a pot of rice burn. The smell lingered for 3 days, and their neighbors refused to speak to them for a week. That much rice, gone. That much hope, gone with it. You know the rhythm of food scarcity. Early spring is the hardest, when the winter stores are low and the new crops haven't come in. That's when people chew bark, dig up roots, or trap sparrows if they're lucky. You've eaten bugs. You don't talk about it. Everyone has. A quirky reality. There's a wild mountain herb called warabai, bracken fern, that some villagers treat like a delicacy. It has to be soaked and boiled 3 times to remove the bitterness, and even then, it tastes like regret. But it fills your stomach. That's the point. There's another dish called okayu, rice porridge that's more water than rice. It's what you feed the sick, the elderly, and sometimes yourself when there's nothing else. You've had okayu made with river pebbles to stretch the flavor. That's not a joke, it's a memory. Tonight your brother asks why you can't eat fish every day. Your father doesn't answer. Your mother tells him about the time she found a half-dried sardine in the snow and brought it home like a treasure. Your brother listens like it's a fairy tale. Some say samurai eat white rice every day. You wouldn't know. You've never tasted it. The pure, polished rice reserved for the powerful. You've only seen it once, in a ceremonial bowl passed between 2 officials at tax season. It gleamed like pearls. You remember how it smelled. Clean, nutty, warm. You still dream about it. There's a traveling monk who visits once a year, carrying miso in a jar strapped to his back. He trades blessings for meals. Your family once offered him pickled plum, and he gave you a pinch of fermented bean paste in return. You spread it on barley gruel and pretended it was a feast. Historians still argue whether peasants in feudal Japan were malnourished or simply lean by necessity. You know the answer. Your ribs count themselves every time you twist too quickly. Your joints creak before your voice does. And yet, food is community. Every harvest, there's a tiny celebration. Rice cakes made with ash-covered hands. Mochi pounded in a hollowed tree trunk. Laughter that tastes better than the food. For a moment, you eat without rationing. For a moment, you feel full. You once sneaked a roasted chestnut from the neighbor's pile. You were 6. You still feel guilty. But you also remember how warm it was, how sweet. You held it in your mouth like it might disappear. At night, you chew dried radish while watching the moon climb the sky. The stars flicker overhead, silent and uncaring. Your mother hums as she sews. Your father cleans a fish hook he hasn't used in weeks, and your stomach growls. Still, you press your hands to it and whisper, "Tomorrow." Midday in the village is usually a lull, a brief stretch when people sit, drink water, fan themselves, and wait for the sun to retreat a little before going back to work. But not today. Today, there's a crowd forming near the central path. The kind of uneasy gathering that only ever means two things. Something valuable has been found, or someone's about to be punished. You already know which one it is. The village. Head stands beside the stalks, his face drawn tight with that familiar blend of public shame and private fear. No one enjoys this part, not even him. But there's a process, and it must be followed. The man in question, an older farmer named Genji, is kneeling beside a wooden post, his hands bound with rope, head bowed low. He's been accused of hiding grain during last month's audit. No one says how much. It doesn't matter. Any is too much. Punishments here aren't meant to teach. They're meant to show. And every villager is required to watch. You inch forward with the others, careful not to stand too close, careful not to be noticed. Children cling to their mothers. Older men squint against the sun. No one speaks. The only sound is the distant cawing of a crow and the shuffle of feet on dry dirt. A samurai steps forward. One from the daimyo's house patrol. Someone you've seen a dozen times but never spoken to. He carries a wooden rod, not a sword, and that somehow makes it worse. Swords kill. Rods humiliate. The first strike lands across Genji's back with a sound like wood hitting wet cloth. He doesn't cry out. He doesn't move. But you can see his shoulders twitch, the way his fingers dig into the earth. The second strike is louder. The third even louder still. No one looks away. You're not allowed to. In your village, punishment is theater. Everyone has a role. The accused, the enforcer, the audience. The shame must be witnessed. The law must be reinforced. And the unspoken message must be clear. The rice belongs to the system. You are merely its hands. There's a rumor, an old one, that in some villages, hands were cut off for stealing. That's not the law anymore, not here. But the story lingers. Your grandmother still tells it in hushed tones, just loud enough for your little brother to hear. Historians still debate the severity of rural justice in feudal Japan. Some argue it was pragmatic, focused more on restitution than cruelty. Others insist it was brutal and disproportionate. You suspect it depended on who you were and who was watching. Justice here isn't blind. It's cross-eyed and grinning. The punishment ends. Genji collapses. The samurai cleans his hands with a cloth. No one offers water. No one helps the old man up, not until the samurai are gone. Then slowly, his neighbor reaches down and lifts him under the arm. It's the only kindness allowed. Quiet, delayed. The village disperses. No one talks about what they just saw. They comment on the weather, on the harvest, on anything else. Your stomach churns as you walk home, remembering the way Genji didn't. Cry out, remembering the look in his eyes. Dinner is quiet that night. No one mentions the punishment. You chew your barley slowly, ears still ringing. Your sister asks if hiding rice makes you evil. Your father says nothing. Your mother says, it makes you hungry. You help clean up, and then, on impulse, walk back to the square. The stocks are empty. The blood is gone. The dust has covered everything again, as if it never happened. But you remember. You remember the time the village punished a girl for stealing firewood. She said she was cold, said her baby was sick. The elders made her sweep the shrine steps every day for a month, while wearing a sign that read, "I burned without permission." That was 3 winters ago. She hasn't spoken much since. You sit by the shrine for a while, tracing the carvings on the stone fox statue. You wonder if the gods care about justice, or if they just care about offerings. You place a grain of rice at the fox's feet anyway, just in case. There's a quirky tradition in a village downriver where thieves are cleansed by being dunked in a cold stream 3 times, while the priest chants blessings. You once asked if that was better than the rod. Your uncle said it depends on the season. As you head home, you hear someone whispering behind a fence. It was only a handful, they say. He was saving it for his daughter. You keep walking. You don't stop. You don't listen. Not out loud. You lie on your mat and stare at the ceiling, counting the cracks in the beam above you. You wonder what it would take to break you. A rod? A loss? A silence too long to bear? And then you think of Genji, lying in the dirt, punished for trying to survive. And you realize, it's not just the pain that breaks people, it's knowing that everyone watched. There's a tremor in the earth. Not much, just enough to rattle the cups on the shelf and make the birds in the thatch take flight all at once. You pause, ladle halfway to your mouth, heart still and listening. Then it stops, just like that. Your family sits in silence. You glance at each other. No one says anything. It's the 3rd one this month. You live with the land, and the land is moody. The tremors are nothing new. Everyone says they've always happened. The priest says it's the mountain spirit rolling in its sleep. Your mother says it's a warning. Your father says, keep eating. So you do. Natural disasters are not rare here. They're woven into the rhythm of life like famine and taxes. You remember your first earthquake. You were 8. It felt like the ground turned to water, the walls of your house swaying like reeds in a storm. You'd thought the earth was solid, permanent. That was the day you learned nothing is. Later that week, a small shrine on the hill slid halfway down the slope. A crack opened in the rice paddy near the eastern field, and the yield never recovered. The priest led a ritual the next day, burned cedar wood, poured sake into the soil, muttered blessings you couldn't understand. The crack is still there. Historians still debate how much natural disaster preparedness villages like yours really had. Some say there were systems, flood drains, early warning signs, priestly rituals. Others say peasants just endured, rebuilt, endured again. You'd believe both. You've lived both. Today, it's not an earthquake. It's the heat. The kind that makes the sky itself feel heavy. The village dogs are silent. Even the insects seem tired. You can smell something strange in the air. Too dry, too brittle. By late afternoon, someone starts shouting from the south fields. The stream has dropped to a trickle. You all gather at the bank, peering into the muddy ribbon of water that used to feed 3 paddies and a dozen households. The stones at the bottom are visible now. Fish flop helplessly in puddles. Children grab buckets and try to save them. Most don't make it. Drought. You can hear the word whispered like a curse. No one wants to say it too loud in case the gods are listening. You walk home with dust in your mouth and an ache in your chest that isn't hunger for once. It's dread. That evening, there's a meeting. Not in the shrine, not in the usual square. Just a quiet gathering behind the rice storehouse, where the elders speak in tight voices about rationing, about the tax quota, about whether the daimyo's men will accept millet instead of rice this season. They won't. The storehouse is still full, for now. But everyone knows that if the drought holds, it won't be for long. Your father says, it's time to dig deeper irrigation channels. Your neighbor says it's time to pray harder. Your mother says it's time to hide food. You help carry water the next morning, 3 trips from the backup well, and still the barrels aren't full. You pass a group of boys trying to dig a trench toward the drying stream. They're too young for this, but so are you. That night, the wind changes. The sky darkens. You hope for rain. You get something else. Thunder rolls in low, like a drumbeat, underground. Lightning cracks over the northern ridge. Then the rain comes, not in soft, kneaded drops, but in a torrential slap, like the heavens suddenly remembered you exist and are furious about it. Your roof leaks immediately. The kitchen corner floods. The path outside your house turns to soup. The same fields that cried for water last week are now drowning in it. You run out with buckets, trying to catch what you can before it all runs off the thatch and back into the cursed stream. You slip, you fall, you laugh, bitter and soaked. There's nothing else to do. By morning, the damage is done. One home collapsed entirely. A sidewall gave out, spilling someone's whole life into the mud. A storage shed near the shrine is floating slightly off its base. The priest's paper, charms are shredded, hanging like seaweed from the eaves. And your field? Your field is a swamp. Rice doesn't like extremes. Too dry, it withers. Too wet, it drowns. The plants bend under the weight of the water, yellowing at the tips, drooping, like they know they're disappointing you. The quirky part? Some villagers believe that if you bury a clay fox statue at the edge of a dying field, the harvest will return. Your aunt does this every year. You're not sure it helps, but her fields always seem a little greener. You borrow one of her statues and bury it quietly that night. But it's not just nature this time. People are getting sick. The standing water is turning. Mosquitoes hatch in clouds. Children start coughing. An old man collapses in the road, fevered and raving. You hear whispers, plague, spirits, punishment. You don't know which is worse. The priest calls for a cleansing ritual. The villagers bring herbs, firewood, dried persimmon slices. You burn offerings in silence, watching the smoke rise in twisting spirals. You wonder if the gods are watching, or if they've moved on to a better village. Historians still argue about how much was known about disease transmission in your era. Some say people understood enough to boil water, to burn contaminated items, to quarantine the sick. Others believe it was all prayer and herbal guesswork. You believe in both. You've seen both fail. That night, you boil your water twice. You wash your hands until they crack. You place a dried plum under your pillow and sleep with one eye open. When the ground trembles again 2 days later, you don't even flinch. It's just another disaster, trying to find a place to sit. You're up before the rooster today, not out of ambition, but necessity. The air feels strange again. Not the kind of strange that brings fire or flood, but the kind that makes your spine stiffen without reason. Something has shifted. Something always is. The rice harvest begins early this year. The elders say the gods are impatient. The truth is simpler. The yield is poor, and the taxmen are coming. Everyone knows what that means. Sleepless days, sore shoulders, and quiet arguments behind the storehouse. You tie a cloth around your head, hoist your sickle, and head into the fields. Harvest is supposed to feel like an ending, like reward, like closure. But here, it feels more like triage. The stalks are shorter, the grain is paler, the insects more aggressive. You cut carefully, not because you're reverent, but because each grain lost is another hole in your winter bowl. Your hands move automatically. Grip, slice, gather, bundle. The rhythm of survival. Your sister works beside you, her face flushed with sun and dust. You both bleed from small cuts. No one talks about it. The sickle is dull, but the replacement blade is already promised to the blacksmith's cousin. You make do. Everyone always makes do. The village has entered what you quietly call the peasant cycle. Work until exhaustion. Scrape by through winter. Plant in hope. Harvest in fear. Repeat. Every year. Forever. The seasons come and go, but nothing else does. You're not moving forward. You're just looping, like a wheel that turns without going anywhere. And yet, there's comfort in the pattern. You know what to expect. You know what a good day looks like. No punishments, full bowls, and maybe, just maybe, a breeze that doesn't carry the smell of mildew or ash. That's enough. The tacksmen arrive at dusk on the third day of harvest. Their sandals are new. Their robes smell like pressed cedar. You're told to stand straight, bow properly, speak only when asked. You do. Everyone does. The grain is measured, carted, labeled. The storehouse sighs under the weight of it all. Like it too knows none of this will stay. One family falls short, just a little. They try to explain. A bad patch, a sudden blight, rats. The tax clerk doesn't blink. They'll make it up next season, with interest. Their son is selected for rotational labor, a kind phrase for forced construction in the next province. He's 16. The quirky thing? There's a folk belief that if you bury rice husks under your sleeping mat, the gods will see your poverty and grant you mercy. You tried it once. All it did was give you splinters. Back at home, your father drinks his rice wine slowly. He never speaks while he drinks, just stares at the fire, thinking of all the rice he no longer owns. You've learned not to interrupt him. Your mother hums an old lullaby, voice thin with exhaustion. Your brother sleeps with his arm across his face, dreaming of a place where rice grows without storms, taxes, or samurai. And you lie awake, staring at the ceiling, counting each exhale like it's borrowed. The cycle will begin again soon. Frost will come. The fields will harden. The aches will settle in your joints. You'll pray for enough salt to cure your daikon. You'll mend your sandals one more time. You'll sharpen your sickle on a stone that's been passed down for 3 generations. You'll marry or you won't. You'll have children or you won't. But your body will continue, hauling, bending, surviving. Because that's what's left to do. And maybe, in a quiet moment, you'll sit by the shrine and write your name in the dirt. Just once. Just to see if it still matters. Wind rustles through the trees as the moon rises. The rice is cut. The taxes paid. The cycle holds. And tomorrow, the fields will be empty again. The air settles now. The torches in the village have dimmed. The crickets take over where the sickles left off. Their soft chorus humming through the fields like breath through a reed pipe. You're no longer working. You're no longer watching. You're simply resting, carried by the rhythm of footsteps that walked before you, and footsteps still to come. The aches in your shoulders begin to ease. The tension in your jaw, held tight since morning, slowly releases. The earth that once felt so sharp beneath you now feels distant, softened by sleep and the memory of motion. Each sound fades. First the far-off rustle of straw mats, then the creak of wood under a shifting body, then even the whisper of wind against old paper screens. Let your thoughts drift now, like those lanterns you once watched float downstream. Let each image, each rice stalk, each flame, each fading footprint recede into the quiet. You don't need to hold the story anymore. You've carried it far enough. Your breath slows, your chest rises, falls. Somewhere in the darkness, a fox cries, then falls silent. You are no longer part of the village. You are the air above it. the mist between trees, the quiet left behind when everyone has gone inside, and the fields finally rest. Let yourself go there, gently. Sleep now, sweet dreams.